We're going to call the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order, and this morning we have case number 6406, and it is an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a site plan for S-20-0010. Mr. Dixon, you want to introduce the file, or yeah, you go ahead and introduce the file. Before he gets started, please make sure that your electronic devices are turned to either silent or vibrate, and make sure that if you're here, you've signed in on the sheet, the clipboard on the side. Another reminder, please leave by the same door that you came in and turn your badges in, so at the end of the day, they're not trying to locate you somewhere in the building. So with that, Mr. Dixon, could you go ahead and introduce the file?
All right, case 6406, an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of approval of the site plan for S-20-0010. The site is located at Liberty Road, Eldersburg, Maryland, on property zone C2, Commercial Medium Intensity District in Election District 14 by Stavlos Properties LLC in care of Michael Stavlos. Code of Public Local Laws and Ordinances, Section 158.133D2. A site visit is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, August 17, 2022 at approximately 9:55 a.m. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. A July 21st, 2022 letter from Roberta J. Wyndham, Esquire County Administrator. Oh. I got the wrong file. Okay. All right, I got the Planning Commission, but that's this one. Okay. In the file of this matter?
So we can strike everything that you said to this point?
No. I said the right thing at the beginning, but when I opened the file, I had the wrong file.
Okay.
All right, we have the site minutes for this case. We have an email from Bill McCormick. We circulated, Ms. Vance, we circulated our previously emailed letter among our community and asked if anyone would like to sign on in support of the letter. Below are 139 names and their associated street names. We purposely did not collect street number of people who signed in support of our letter. These are people who live in our community. This was not a change or petition. So there's the 139 names here. Next thing we have is a email from Timothy Passarello. Attached, please find comments from the Freedom District Citizens Association concerning the appeal of a decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding potential development of Long Reach Farm Lot 20. And this is a 2-page letter for that. Let's see. Then there's an August 5th, 2022 email from Matt E. Or Matt E. My apologies. My objection is to case 6406. All right, there's an August 5th, 2022 email from Jessica Kavanaugh. I live close to the proposed new development on Liberty Road known as Long Reach Farms. I feel the proposed structure is not in keeping with the surrounding environment, and in particular the apartments. I have seen the other building in Eldersburg that looks like the one proposed, and have always thought it looks aesthetically like a motel. In fact, for the first 3 years of living in the area, I thought it was a motel. The proposed structural plans have the same look and feel as a motel, and I feel this will reduce my property value, as motels carry a stigma and don't reflect upscale, upmarket living. I would rather the area be kept to reflect our country, small town feel, and to blend with the surrounding structures. There's an August 6, 2022 email from Kevin Wade. Too many people want to stifle any economic growth and want to stop any building whatsoever. I hope that the denial is overturned and more business and opportunities exist in our community. There's an August 1st, 2022 notice of a public hearing for this case in the paper. There's an August 4th, 2022 email from Matt E. In reference to case 6402, I request the Board of Appeals deny the developer's request. I, along with my fellow residents, are adamantly against this development request. Thank you for representing our community against developer overreach. Matt E. There's an August 4th, 2022 email from Derek Soderstrom. I'd like to express my concerns for this project. This lot is not the place for this kind of development. This will negatively affect property values of the surrounding homes. This area also is very dangerous, entering and exiting out onto Route 26. Adding more to this span of 26 without the supporting infrastructure is going to make things even more dangerous and chaotic. Not to mention the additional 3-4-story 55 and up apartments being built across the street currently. All right, there's a letter that is stamped in August 4th, 2022 from Bill McCormick, 3-page typewritten letter. Hearing notice was posted July 25th, 2022 by Scott Robinson, zoning inspector. And then there's the appeal, Planning Commission's denial of approval of site plan. There's a June 16th, 2022 letter from Kelly Schaefer Miller to the board. There are some plans from CLSI. The appeal letter basically says at the end that the Planning Commission's denial was arbitrary and capricious and not based on any reasonable interpretation of the facts and information before it. There's a May 23rd, 2022 letter from Linda D. Eisenberg, Secretary to the Planning Commission. Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission at its meeting on Tuesday, May 17th, 2022, voted to deny the above referenced final site plan. So that you will have some record of the action taken by the commission on this particular item, I am including an excerpt of the unofficial minutes from the meeting. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
Do we have a motion to enter the file into evidence?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
We will go ahead and enter the file into evidence. So this is the de novo hearing of an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of approval of the site plan. So I'm assuming, Ms. Miller, since you're the representation for the appellant, that you will go first.
Mr. Bale, well, let me introduce myself first of all. Kelly Schaefer Miller, 73 East Main Street, Westminster, Maryland, 21157. I am prepared to go first, but I also believe that Mr. Allman is prepared to call Ms. Matthias from the county staff, and so if he believes that it would be more efficient to open with her testimony, I am not opposed to that.
Okay, very good.
Yes, and it's James Allman on behalf of the Planning Commission. As this is a de novo hearing, I just thought it would be wise to sort of run this as if it was a Planning Commission meeting. And typically, when the Planning Commission is reviewing plans, a representative from the Office of Development Review goes before the applicant developer. So I just thought that would be the correct process to do today.
Okay, very good.
And with that, though, I would like to make a brief opening statement before we begin testimony, if we're there.
No objection.
And that's no objection. Okay, we'll go ahead and go forward with that format. So, Ms. Miller.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the board. Briefly, I would like to enter any objection to the file to the extent that there were letters from people who are not here and present today to speak. I would like to preserve that for the record. My guess is that several of those names that were attached on that letter are not here and available for cross-examination, and therefore I do not think that this board should consider that in weighing the evidence before it here today. I would also, and perhaps I'll wait for Ms. Matias to start testifying, but I would like the development review file to become a part of this record as well. So I would ask that the board consider that. I'm not sure. Do you have that? Or is that okay? We are here today on an appeal of a site plan. As you heard Mr. Dixon introduce, the location of the property is on Maryland Route 26 near the intersection of Clee Mill Road. I believe the board conducted a site visit. This property is zoned for the use. It is zoned C2, and the use requested is for a planned commercial center. Sorry, it's undergone a name change somewhat recently, so I have to get used to it. A planned commercial center. The plan that will be presented before you here today, as you'll hear testimony to, meets the definition of a planned commercial center. It has gone through all of the relevant technical review and received all agency approvals. As Mr. Bale opened the hearing, this is a de novo proceeding, and so we will be presenting this to you for approval of the site plan, as if you sit in the shoes of the Planning Commission. That is your role here today, and so that is the presentation that you will hear from the applicants or appellants in this case. You will hear testimony from my witnesses here today, Mr. Stavlos, who's the property owner, Mr. Ron Thompson, who's representing the engineer, Mr. Mark Keeley, who's representing the traffic group, who prepared the traffic study for this project, and then Mr. Joe Rudder, who's a planner. So you will hear all the testimony presented to approve this site plan here today, and we ask you to keep an open mind, and with that, I will lead the way for Ms. Matias.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to call her as a witness, or are you just going to have her make the presentation?
I was just going to have her make a presentation.
Okay, but very good. Before we get started, because this is a little bit different from our normal procedures, anyone that's going to testify here today, I would ask that you stand and take the oath. So, Jay, you're not going to weigh in on this?
Not if I can.
Okay, very good. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Very good. You may be seated. Okay, Mr. Allman.
Okay, Laura Matias, the Director of Development Review, is going to present the staff report to you regarding this property.
Ms.
Good morning.
Ms. Matias.
Good morning, Laura Matias, Bureau Chief of Development Review. And I was the presenter on May 17th to the Planning Commission of this final report. So as Jim said, I am simply going to give you the report as if I am doing it all over again to the Planning Commission. So we do have a slideshow that goes along with it to orient you and provide you images of the proposed plan. All right, so this is a final site plan before you today. The county file number is S200010, and the file name is Long Reach Farm Lot 20. This is a planned commercial center. That is the title of the project. The location, to orient you, we are on the south side of Maryland Route 26, just east of Cleese Mill Road. The owner and developer are Stavlos Properties LLC, and the engineer is Van Mar Associates, which Ms. Schaefer Miller indicated they are here today as well to answer questions. The zoning is C2, commercial medium intensity. The property itself is 6.58 acres. This is in the Freedom area, the priority funding area, and in the growth area for Freedom. We're going to go to the next slide and zoom in. So we are before you today with two actions that are required. One is approval of the plan pursuant to Chapter 155, Development and Subdivision of Land, and two, approval of the site plan pursuant to Chapter 156, Adequate Public Facilities and Concurrency Management. As a residential site plan, this is subject to concurrency management as well. So there are two actions required. All right, so you'll see the property right along 26. I'm trying to get my cursor to, there we go. Thank you. All right. It was created as Lot 20 of the Long Reach Farm subdivision in 2017 and recorded on a record plat. Prior to that subdivision, the future Lot 20 was rezoned from conservation to business neighborhood residential, BNR. And that had a unanimous approval of the rezoning request granted by the Board of County Commissioners on December 5th, 2013. In December of 2019, the county underwent a comprehensive rezoning for the commercial and industrial zone properties. At that point in time, December 2019, the zoning was adjusted to the current C2 designation. BNR is no longer a zoning district. All right, so the adjacent property to the west is Zone C2 and is vacant. There are several businesses on C2 zone properties between the subject property and the intersection of Old Liberty, Maryland Route 26, and Cleese Mill Road. So if I go back, you'll see the zoning. All of the red are the C2 zoning district that I'm referring to.
Laura, could you blow that up a little bit so that we can?
I wish I could. I'm not sure that I can. Oh, I can.
Yes, you can.
That's about as far as it wants to go.
That's okay.
So
Thank you.
here's the subject property, and then you'll see across the street and adjoining to the west properties. Good?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. The property to the north, which is across Liberty Road, is also Zone C2, which you just saw, and there is an approved site development plan for a retirement community on that property called 44 Liberty Road. It was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 20th, 2021. Immediately to the south and east.
Could you point that out on the map with your cursor, please, where that,
Yes. The property is here.
okay.
And what did you say it was gonna be?
It's a retirement community.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the property to, lost my cursor again. The property immediately to the south and east, these are actually adjoined right here. So to the south and east of the subject property, they are zoned conservation. This is Lot 19A of Long Reach Farms, part of that subdivision. The southern adjoining portion of Lot 19A is extensively covered with environmental easements, and the eastern portion is undeveloped. Okay. The property itself is open land, you'll see, with a downward slope towards the southeast. The property, just to note, it does not have any frontage onto Rhonda Road here. Okay, that Lot 19A lies between Lot 20 and Rhonda Road. The 2020 spring amendment cycle to the Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan added this subject property to the existing service area for both water and sewer services. So right now, it does have that designation of existing. Okay. Some photos of the site. And one more. This is behind all the way back on Rhonda Road, looking all the way up to Liberty Road. I apologize. I'm not sure. If I click this X, I might be able to get rid of this. Yay. Perfect. Okay, so the plan proposed, the concept site plan was subject to citizen involvement in August of 2020 at our technical review committee meeting. There were 10 citizens who attended that meeting, and the concerns that were posed were regarding traffic, pedestrian traffic to Century High School, lighting on the site, pole and headlight trespass onto adjoining properties, noise associated with dumpsters, and stormwater runoff from the site, as well as a general concern of property values. The Planning Commission saw the concept plan for informational purposes on September 21st, 2021. As a concept plan, there is neither an approval or a denial. It is for informational purposes. Discussion at that meeting revolved around the proposed mixed use on this site, the traffic, the site layout, and sidewalk connectivity. Plan modifications between the concept plan, when the Planning Commission first saw it, and the final phase included extension of the sidewalk all the way to the eastern property line, to that adjoining vacant property, and some reduced landscaping plantings that were above and beyond the requirements. And those plantings were proposed here, and that was reduced at the final plan stage. So the owner of the property proposes to develop it with a two-building, two-story planned commercial center. The commercial space is on the ground floor, and a total of 34 residential units on the second floor, each at approximately 904 square feet as indicated on the plan. Planned commercial centers are defined in Chapter 158, the zoning code, and are a principal permitted use in the C2 zoning district, subject to regulations in Chapter 155.094. The section is planned commercial centers. That section is included in the staff report, and it was discussed at the concept review as well. So the two buildings of 2 stories are 39 foot 2 3/4 inches in height, as indicated on the building elevation sheet. They are proposed on the site to be approximately 70 feet from the south property line. Each building is 15,600 square feet per floor, and as I said, 34 residential units at the second floor. In accordance with the code, the unit size shall be no less than 600 square feet, no more than 1,000 square feet. And each unit is stated to be approximately 904 square feet. Based on the trip generation numbers, a traffic study was required. The proposed site access and all off-site intersections will operate at an adequate level of service. The study was reviewed by both the county and the State Highway Administration. We are, of course, on Maryland 26 State Highway Road. No traffic mitigation measures are required as a result of the traffic impact study. However, there are coordinated improvements right in front of the development, which are coordinated with the 44 Liberty project across the street. So State Highway reviewed and has approved this. Those include a 6-foot wide bicycle lane as part of the access improvements, a deceleration right turn lane into this property, an acceleration lane as well, and a dedicated left turn lane for Maryland Route 26 for westbound traffic. So those improvements will occur in conjunction with both projects happening right here. There is a single full movement entrance from Maryland 26 proposed into the site. You enter immediately into the parking lot, one parking lot, and the drive aisle does circumvent the site, providing access to the rear of the building as well. So you can fully come all the way around the building. There is a dumpster provided at each building. In regards to parking requirements, Chapter 155 for planned commercial centers does require 5.5 spaces for every 1,000 square feet of floor area. So based on the use, 172 parking spaces are required. 203 spaces are provided, which is 31 spaces more than what is required. Site amenities include sidewalk, bicycle racks, and a possible transit stop. You'll find sidewalk coming from Building 1, heading north to Route 26, and where there's a possible transit stop located, and sidewalk all the way across the frontage to the eastern property line, as well as connecting and wrapping down to the other building on this side. There's a photometric plan in the plan set, which shows 25-foot high light poles with full cutoff fixtures. Lighting levels are 0 at the western property line, at the southeast and western property lines. No signage is proposed for the project at this time. Connection to the public sewer system is occurring on the Century High School property across the street, across Liberty Road. The developer has an agreement in place already with the Board of Education, and there will be an easement established. The water line connection is proposed to connect at Linton Road. The Bureau of Utilities has approved this plan. Emergency services, fire and emergency services comment that the building must be sprinklered and fire hydrants are proposed on site. Additionally, the developer is required to place hydrants at approximately 500 to 600 foot intervals along the water line extension to Linton Road. The Department of Planning recommended a discussion with the Department of Public Works regarding that transit stop. Building elevations are provided in the plan set as well. Materials noted are white brick and sand colored ephes. Units are shown with balconies, and the buildings are connected at the second floor. Stormwater management for the project will be achieved with microbial retention facility, bioswales, and permeable pavers. There is a storm drain pipe system which will outfall to the southern adjoining property, which has extensive environmental easements and is under the same ownership as Lot 20. So that Lot 19A that we talked about at the beginning with the environmental easements. These stormwater facilities will be privately maintained. The proposal is exempt from floodplain code. Water Resources Grading have approved the plan. The required landscaping includes parking lot landscaping, parking lot landscaping, screening at Liberty Road, and screening at the dumpsters. There is additional landscaping proposed parallel to the southern property line and along part of the western property line. That is above and beyond requirements in the landscape manual. And forest conservation requirements were previously addressed when they came through with the plan of subdivision. So all agencies have approved the plan, and pursuant to Chapter 155, Staff recommends approval of the site development plan, subject to 7 conditions outlined in the staff report. Number 1, the developer enters into a public works agreement with Carroll County that guarantees completion of the improvements. Number 2, that utility easements be granted to the county commissioners of Carroll County and recorded simultaneously with the public works agreement. Number 3, that the sewer easement on the Century High School property be granted to the county commissioners prior to or simultaneously with the public works agreement. That a stormwater management easement and maintenance agreement be granted to the county commissioners of Carroll County as an easement of access to the commissioners or authorized representatives by a deed to be recorded simultaneously with the public works agreement. Number 5, a landscape maintenance agreement be granted to the county commissioners of Carroll County and recorded simultaneously with the public works agreement. Number 6, a public access easement over the extent of sidewalk that parallels Route 26 be granted to the county commissioners of Carroll County and recorded simultaneously with the public works agreement. And number 7, of course, any changes to this plan will require an amended site development plan to be approved by the Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission. In regards to Chapter 156, as I stated, this is subject to concurrency management as a residential site plan. Staff does recommend that the Planning Commission approve the final plan as follows. Number 1, police, schools, fire, and emergency services, water and sewer services, and roads are considered adequate. Number 2, that a building permit be issued for the site plan before it becomes void, which is within 18 months of the date of written approval. Number 3, the building permit reservations are for 25 units for fiscal year 23 and 9 units for fiscal year 24. As a reminder, they are limited to 25 building permits per fiscal year. Number 4, the building permit reservations are allowed to roll over year after year until the sunset provision takes effect and the plan becomes void. That concludes my report. If you have any questions for me, I am happy to answer them.
Board members, questions? Jeez, am I the only one with questions? How many residents will there be at this location?
There are 34 units.
34 units. And how was the density determined?
So the planned commercial center section of the code 155094. Under accessory uses, it indicates that the planning commission may allow residential uses as an accessory use to a planned commercial center. And then it gives size, as stated in the report, must be between 600 square feet and 1,000 square feet. And the area of the residential unit shall not exceed 50% of the total area of the structures within the planned commercial center.
Okay,
That's about the extent of the,
correct me if I'm wrong, the old rules were that the density was determined by the BZA and then it went back to the planning commission. Would that be?
this is true for assisted living facilities.
Okay. And this is this an age restricted?
It is not.
It is not, okay. Does the final plan that was turned down by the planning commission reflect the changes that were recommended at the conclusion of the presentation of the concept plan?
Is my recollection that at the concept plan review, there was discussion of many elements, as I noted, but there was no distinct direction, specifics given to the developer.
So the concept plan and the final plan were identical, or were there changes made between the concept and the final plan?
Actually included the concept plan in the slideshow, so I'll skip to that. If you focus right here on the eastern property line, as I stated in my report, there was landscaping that was reduced, and the extent of the sidewalk was lengthened all the way to the eastern property line, which was not shown at concept. So I'm going to
So we
scroll.
have, so we got more sidewalk and less landscaping.
More sidewalk, less landscaping, landscaping not being required. So here's the concept plan that was seen by the planning commission.
Okay. And the photogenic plan met all county standards, because we heard in the introduction of the file about the fear of light intrusion on neighboring properties.
The photometric plan did meet, yes, what we are looking for at
Okay.
the property lines, correct.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay.
Ms. Eckert? Oh, wait,
If nobody else has any, then I wanted to ask one.
okay, go ahead, Mr. Dixon, you might clear something up for us.
Okay, I was trying to take notes, and you said chapter 156, staff recommends approval. Did you say that?
Correct.
And you also said, let's see, all agencies approved the plan and staff recommended it with 7 conditions.
Correct.
Say that? Now, just so I'm clear, so the county agency and staff recommended this approval to the planning commission.
Correct.
Now, I know this is a de novo hearing today, but is there anything written down as to why the planning commission denied this?
That would be in the meeting minutes as well as in watching the video of the planning commission meeting. I believe that Jim or Stacy may speak to that.
Mr. Allman, will you address that?
Well, yes, there are the minutes from the May meeting in which the Planning Commission denied the approval of this plan. However, just procedurally, this is a de novo hearing, so we sort of act like that never happened.
Okay.
And that we are now in front of you, who have stepped into the shoes of the Planning Commission to review the plan just like they did in May.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
That was my big question. Follow up to that, is it your understanding that the 7 conditions were going to be met by the developer?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Fordman? You good?
That was my question, too.
You good, Mr. Simmons? Okay, very good. Thank you.
May I ask Ms. Matthias just one quick question?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Matthias, if you recall, I know it's been some time since these plans were submitted, but prior to the concept presentation, was there an additional building shown on this plan as well?
Yes, there was.
Is it your understanding that that is part of the reason that additional landscaping at that time had been provided to accommodate an additional building? If you don't, I understand it's been several years now, so.
So the concept plan that the planning commission saw was already reduced to the 2
Right, okay.
buildings. So that, I would have to go back even further to see what the plan looked like when there was a 3rd building perpendicular to 26 on the eastern side of the property initially. But I am unaware of what the landscaping looked like in conjunction with that.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions? Are you going to remain here for the rest of the hearing, I hope?
Is that a request?
Thank you,
Yes.
Ms. Thanks, Ms. Matthias.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Allman?
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to first call Mr. Ron Thompson. Wherever you're comfortable is fine with me. So from a procedural standpoint, what I have done, and I've spoken with Mr. Allman about this, and he does not have an objection, I believe, is I have prepared everything that I intend to present to you in essentially one packet with page numbers on it. So I am going to ask that be entered as applicant's exhibit 1, although I can ask at the conclusion of the testimony if you prefer. But I will provide copies to everyone, and then as we proceed throughout, we will reference the pages of that document.
I have no objection to that methodology.
Here's a copy. Here's some copies for us too, so. I do. Extra ones. Mr. Thompson, can you please introduce yourself, stating your name, spelling your last name, and your address, please?
Ronald Thompson, Thompson. I live at 5901 Oshanta Drive, Mount Airy, Maryland.
Mr. Thompson, where do you work presently?
Banmar Associates, a civil site engineering company in Mount Airy, Maryland.
And can you briefly describe your educational and professional background?
I have a Bachelor of Science Civil Engineering in 1976 from Iowa State University and a Master of Civil Engineering 1978 from the Pennsylvania State University.
Approximately how long have you worked in Carroll County?
Over 16 years.
Are you familiar with Carroll County and its code?
Yes,
Have you testified before this board and/or other bodies in the county as an expert?
yes. In front of this board, as well as the Mount Airy Board of Zoning Appeals and the Howard County Zoning Appeal Commission.
Mr. Thompson, I'm showing you what has been marked as applicant's exhibit 1, page 7 of that document. Is that a copy of your current resume?
It is.
I would like to offer Mr. Thompson as an expert in the area of engineering and site design for purposes of today's hearing.
We will accept him as an expert witness in those fields.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, you heard Ms. Matthias's, well, actually, I'll ask you, were you present and did you hear all of the testimony presented here today so far?
I did.
Was Ms. Matthias's presentation of the location of the site correct?
Correct.
Were you hired to prepare the site plan for this property?
Yes.
Did you prepare what has been presented as S200010?
Yes.
And approximately when did you make the first submittal of that site plan?
July 2020.
Can you explain the request that was made at that point in time, just briefly?
The initial site plan contained 3 buildings consisting of commercial space with residential apartments above the commercial space. This was reduced to 2 buildings because of the water sewer allocation for the site.
And what is the zoning of the subject site?
C2 Commercial Medium Intensity District.
Is it accurate that the intended use was a planned commercial center?
Correct. Planned commercial center with commercial space on the first floor, residential apartments on the second floor.
So that has been the proposal since day 1 of the site plan, is that accurate?
Correct.
Is it, to your understanding, is a planned commercial center a principal permitted use in the C2 district?
Yes, per section 155.094 of the Carroll County Code.
To your knowledge, did this site plan proceed through the ordinary county review process?
Yes.
And can you just, well, Mrs. Matthias already testified to this, but can you explain what arm of the county leads that submittal process?
Development review.
And I'm going to direct you to page 8 of this packet. Is this, well, read to us the title of this page.
Site Development Plan Review Transmittal?
Okay. Does this show the agencies that the plans are distributed to during the site plan process?
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, were these plans distributed to all relevant agencies?
Yes.
I'm switching to page 9 of this packet, Mr. Thompson. Is this an overview of the review process for a site plan?
Yes.
And you heard Mrs. Matias speak to this, but is it in fact accurate that there's both a concept level review by Planning Commission and then a final review by Planning Commission?
Correct. After the initial submission, the process begins with a technical review committee by the county, where all agencies provide their initial comments. Those comments are responded to, and including any adjustments to the site plan based upon county comments. There can be and were numerous submissions, particularly for stormwater management, until each agency provides approval of the concept site plan. Following concept site plan approval and after initial Planning Commission review, additional submissions are made until all agencies have approved the site plan to allow the site plan to be presented to the Planning Commission for final site plan approval.
So is it accurate that this plan was presented before Planning Commission in the ordinary process?
Yes.
You saw, Mrs. Matias, I think it's still up on the screen there, what was presented. Is that a depiction of the concept plan that was presented to Planning Commission?
Correct.
Approximately when was that presentation?
September 21, 2021.
Between that plan and what was ultimately presented to Planning Commission for final approval, did the plan configuration change greatly?
No.
At the time of presenting this concept plan to the Planning Commission, had the plan received all concept level agency approvals?
Yes.
After the concept review by Planning Commission, were there additional submittals prior to reaching final approval through all agencies?
Yes, there were approximately 10 submissions addressing approximately 13 comment letters from the Board of Utilities, county agencies, and State Highway Administration.
At the time that the plan arrived to Planning Commission for requesting final site plan approval, did the plan meet all of the final site plan requirements?
Yes.
I'm turning you to page 10 here of the packet. Can you just briefly describe what that is?
Page 10 of the packet is the site plan requirements checklist that we are required to include and follow in all site plans, including what the title block looks like, the required general notes for a site plan.
Approximately when did this plan come before Planning Commission requesting final approval?
May 17, 2022.
And at that time, did the plan have all agency approvals?
Yes.
Is it true that one of those approvals was SHA? State Highway Administration? who
Correct.
I will refer to as SHA.
Yes.
Through the review process, was it your outfit or another that prepared and went through the review process for a traffic impact study?
Another traffic concepts.
Is it true that your agency, you yourself, communicated with SHA regarding the site access aspect of this development?
After State Highway had approved the traffic study, we then prepared the State Highway improvement plans, working with SHA.
I'm going to turn you to page 15, and I apologize, as part of this packet, anytime that there was a plan, the page numbers appeared very small and in the upper right corner. But I'm going to turn you to page 15 of this packet. Mr. Thompson, is this the plan that you just referenced?
Yes.
Are these all improvements that have been agreed to and negotiated with SHA as part of the review process?
Correct. State Highway required traffic improvements to mitigate impacts to traffic on Route 26 and to provide safe ingress and egress from the site.
And that was related to the access of the site and not to the results of the traffic impact study. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Go ahead.
The improvements followed the traffic impact study. And then as we moved through the process, State Highway modified a little of the striping to coordinate with the site improvements of 44 Liberty Road, so that there was one set of transportation improvements through that section of Route 26.
During Ms. Matthias's testimony, you heard her speak to the specific improvements that are shown on this plan. Do you recall that?
Yes,
Okay. Were those accurately stated?
yes,
Okay. So those are all shown as part of this plan that's included in Exhibit 1. Is that correct?
correct.
I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit because Ms. Matthias already answered some of these questions. But in your expert opinion, does the most recently submitted site plan for this project meet all relevant requirements?
Yes,
In your expert opinion, is there any justification under the code to deny this site plan?
no,
Throughout the site plan process, you heard Ms. Matthias speak to community or citizen involvement. Was that an accurate depiction?
yes.
Those are my only questions of Mr. Thompson at this time.
Board members, questions of Mr. Thompson's testimony? Does anyone, I did this backwards, anyone from the public have any questions of Mr. Thompson's testimony? Go to the microphone. Please state your name, address, and occupation, and spell for the record your last name. And again, you'll have the opportunity for your own testimony. These are questions of his testimony to this
Sir, I
point.
understand.
Okay.
My name is Bill McCormick.
Okay, get a little bit closer to the microphone.
My name is Bill McCormick, M-A-C-C-O-R-M-A-C-K. I am a cybersecurity engineer. My address is 5685 Rhonda Road, Eldersburg, Maryland.
Okay.
My first question is, how old are the traffic studies that are being referenced?
I still can't hear.
Can you speak up a little bit more?
Sorry, how old are the traffic studies being referenced?
I don't object to Mr. Thompson stating this, but just so Mr. McCormick also understands, I will be calling Mr. Keeley, who actually prepared the traffic study. So he may be better suited to answer that question. If Mr. Thompson has the answer, I have no problem with him stating that.
The study is dated October 2020, but I believe the traffic engineer can provide all of the specifics in terms of presentation and questions on the traffic study.
In your experience, is it common to use traffic studies that are this outdated?
This study is not outdated. This study was done at the beginning of the site plan process.
Did the study take into account the newly developed property directly across the street?
I will defer to the traffic engineer to answer the specifics of the traffic study.
And I actually have two questions for Ms. Matthias. Should I wait to address those later, or would you like me to ask those now? Seeing as she already testified, I'd just like to make sure that.
Let's go ahead and let's clean that up, and we'll let Ms. Matthias answer those questions. Ms. Matthias, could you, see, I knew there was a reason I didn't want you to leave the room.
Thank you, I appreciate that. When was the first preliminary site plan with 3 buildings submitted to the county and accepted?
I would have to refer to the file. I don't have that answer off the top of my head, but it is right here if you'd like me to look.
I would
Could,
like.
could you do that? I mean,
I'm not sure if it would satisfy Mr. McCormick, but we do have the answer to that question, if Mr. Thompson could speak to that.
Mr. Thompson, can you,
Our first submittal was July 2020.
July 2020?
Correct.
That may be his first submittal, but I'm just making sure that there was not a submittal prior in the prior year, maybe in October.
The initial submittal was received July 10th, 2020.
Just to be clear, that was the plan that showed the 3 buildings.
And yes, there are 3 buildings shown on this plan,
Okay.
correct?
Okay. So I'm fairly certain, I would need to go back and verify that there was a plan submitted prior to the Board of County Commissioners voting on the commercial comprehensive rezoning. And that when the very first plan for this property was submitted, the zoning on this property was still BNR. So that's just how I would like to address that. So if there's any way that you guys can verify that was actually the very first submittal, I would appreciate that. And those are all the questions I have for these 2 people. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Do you, Mr. Matthias, do you want to address that?
Other than this property going through that plan of subdivision, which I mentioned, I do not recall a prior site development plan which was being processed through the Bureau of Development Review.
Okay. Okay, very, very good. Does anyone else have questions of either Ms. Matthias or Mr. Thompson's testimony? Okay, very good. Want to call your next witness?
Yes, can I ask that development
Yeah, we
review?
already asked them. So,
Can I-
do
I'm
we?
sorry, can I ask that the development review file be included as one of the exhibits or as the record in this case?
Without objection, you don't object,
No objection.
Mr. Allman? Okay, we will go ahead and include that. How would you like that labeled?
We can exhibit 2, I believe makes sense.
Sure.
Thank
Okay.
you,
We will accept that into evidence.
thank you. I would call Mr. Mark Keeley. Mr. Keeley, can you please introduce yourself, stating your name, spelling your last name, and your address for the record?
Yes, good morning, Board. My name is Mark Keeley, Keeley. I work for Traffic Concepts Incorporated. My address is 7525 Connolly Drive, Suite B, Hanover, Maryland, 21076.
Mr. Keeley, can you please briefly describe your educational and professional background to the board?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree from Salisbury University and a master's degree in planning from Towson University. I'm a former member of the American Association of Certified Planners, and I'm a current member of the ITE Professional Transportation Certification Program. I've been developing traffic studies for 29 years in Harford County, Queen Anne's County, and for the last 17 years, I've been a project manager for Traffic Concepts.
Do you have experience working in Carroll County?
Yes, I've, over my 17 years, I've done many traffic impact studies. The last time I appeared before the Planning Commission was for the Freedoms Grant project, and I have several projects that are in the process right now.
Are you familiar with the county and its code and requirements?
Yes.
Have you ever testified in front of this board or other bodies as an expert?
Yes, I have.
Can you briefly describe that?
As I said, the last time I presented my traffic study was the Freedoms Grant, age-restricted development near Raincliff Road.
Mr. Keeley, I'm showing you page 36 of applicants or appellants, if you will, Exhibit 1. Is that a recent copy of your resume?
It is, yes.
I would like to offer Mr. Keeley as an expert in the area of traffic engineering.
And we will accept him as an expert witness in that area.
Thank you. Mr. Keeley, can you briefly describe your involvement in this project, when you began that involvement and the review process that you went through?
Yes, so I started the process with the county in August of 2020. August 25th, 2020, I received the final scoping agreement from the county for the traffic impact study that outlines the study limits. And then in October 2020, I completed my traffic impact study and submitted it to the county and to the State Highway Administration.
Go back for us and just explain the point of the scoping letter and what that then allows you to do.
So the purpose of the scoping letter identifies the intersections that we are to study. It identifies the time periods, weekday, Saturday, weekday 6 to 9 a.m., 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and 10 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday. It provides information about the background developments to be included in the study, growth rates to be included in the study, and discusses trip generation. Then the letter also discusses the standards that the study is to meet in terms of intersection levels of service.
And that is a letter that is generated by whom?
It's generated by Carroll County.
And then that is the basis for your preparation of a traffic impact study. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this property fronts on Maryland Route 26, which is a state highway. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So throughout this process, was SHA also involved in the review of any traffic impact study?
Yes, they were.
And, I mean, I guess it goes to the background of all of this, but obviously the impetus for this is that the county required a traffic impact study as part of its site plan review process. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I am going to show you, Mr. Allman has his nice copy, what I've marked as Appellant's Exhibit 3. Can you just tell us what this is, please? This is a very lengthy copy, so I only make one of these.
Yes, this is the traffic study that I wrote with my colleagues at Traffic Concepts. It's dated October 2020.
Okay. And was this the traffic impact study that was submitted and reviewed through the county and the state during the site plan?
Yes.
Okay. What was the outcome of that review process?
So the outcome of the study was, the finding was that the key intersections identified in the study operated at levels of service D or better.
So did it or did it not show that the intersections meet the county code and the county requirements?
It did, yes.
Okay. Did, as a result of the review of this traffic impact study, did you receive final approval letters from the county and SHA regarding the traffic study?
Yes, I did.
Now, you spoke to the fact that the scoping letter lays out some of the background information that's to be included in the traffic study ultimately. Can you just explain what background development means and what was taken into consideration as part of this traffic impact study?
Sure. Background includes two different things. One is a growth rate. The growth rate was determined by State Highway Travel Forecasting, and the Travel Forecasting Division determined a growth rate of 1.3% along Maryland 26, and that was applied throughout the project's growth build-out period. The other item that we include in background are developments that have received preliminary plan approval but are not completed yet or not fully built. We included the 44 Liberty Road background development that's opposite of our site. That was an age-restricted development with 54 townhouse units.
So is this information that you also received through the county and that the county provides you some information on development that's in the pipeline that then gets factored into this sort of study?
Correct. So the county provides us the pipeline developments to include in the study.
In your expert opinion, does this plan meet all traffic requirements of the county and state?
Yes, it does.
Those are my only questions for Mr. Keeley.
Okay, does anyone from the public have any questions of Mr. Keeley's testimony?
Do you need me to state my name again and all that jazz?
Yes, please.
Bill McCormick, MACCORMACK, 5685 Rhonda Road, Eldersburg, Maryland. So I already asked this, but I would like to get your answer as well. How old are the traffic studies that were used in this development?
It's dated October 2020.
October 2020. And
Talking to the mic, sorry, Mark.
October.
again, I would like to ask, so I think 2-year-old traffic studies are fairly old, but is it common to use traffic studies that are this dated?
Again, the traffic study is not dated. It was submitted with the official development package at the time we made our initial submission to the state highway and to the county.
What are the factors that were adjusted to accommodate the COVID-based lockdowns in one of these traffic studies?
So the traffic counts, the approved counts that we included in the study were 2018. Those counts were approved by the county and state highway administration. A growth rate of 1.3% was applied to the 2018 counts for a 2-year period to bring them to the 2020 baseline condition. The Saturday counts were counted in 2020, and the approved COVID growth rate approved by the county and the state was 5%. So 5% was added to the 2020 Saturday volumes.
What information did you use to calculate that 5%?
That was determined by the State Highway Travel Forecasting Division.
So forecasting estimates.
Yes, sir.
Why were 2 traffic studies used to address this development instead of 1?
I didn't hear that question.
Why were 2 traffic studies used?
Okay, gotcha.
I submitted 1 traffic
Yeah,
impact.
but I believe the only testimony that's been presented is that there's one traffic impact study.
Ms. Matthews could answer this, but in her letters to me and to the community, she stated that there were 2 traffic studies used and presented for this development, presented to the county for this development. One for daytime count numbers and one for weekend count numbers.
So, if I can answer, my study, according to the scope of services, we study the weekday AM and PM peak hour conditions, and then we also study, because it includes a commercial component to the development, we study the Saturday peak hour, which, as I stated, was between 10 and 3 p.m. So somewhere in there is the peak Saturday.
So
So it's one study with,
it's one study with 2 different time frames
yes, sir.
as a result of it being a commercial use.
Yes.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
It does. It just creates a little bit of confusion as to why the public was told that 2 traffic studies were used. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Board members, any questions of Mr. Keeley's testimony? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, let's go ahead and take about a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
We call the BZA hearing back to order. Ms. Schaefer, you want to call another witness?
Yes, thank you. I would like to call Mr. Joe Rudder. Mr. Rudder, can you please introduce yourself, stating your name and address for the record?
Yes, Joseph Rudder, R-U-T-T-E-R, 3435 Jennings Chapel Road, Woodbine.
Before I start with his testimony, it just occurs to me, I wanted to ensure that I asked that Appellant's Exhibit 2, 3, the traffic impact study, be entered.
I don't know whether we did or not, but we will accept that into evidence.
Thank you. Mr. Rudder, where do you presently work?
I have my own limited liability corporation, JWR LLC, and I'm the sole managing member.
Can you please describe your professional certifications?
Yes, unlike engineers, planners are not certified at the state level or licensed at the state level, but there's the American Planning Association that evaluates education, experience, and a comprehensive exam. And if you can qualify, become American Institute of Certified Planners, and that's a nationally recognized certification. It also requires ongoing training every year, coursework that has to be taken to maintain AICP status, and I've maintained that since 1978.
Can you please summarize your professional experience in the industry?
Yes, I started a professional as an engineering technician at State Highway Administration Highway Design. Soon after that, moved to Howard County Office of Planning and Zoning in 1966, where I served in numerous positions. I won't go through all the details, but eventually deputy director for 3 years and then director for 12 years. At that point, I retired, solicited to come to Anne Arundel County and served there as the Planning and Zoning Office for 4 years. And after that, retired again and went into the private sector doing the consulting work, hopefully on a part-time basis.
Are you familiar and have you worked in Carroll County before?
I've worked on cases. I have not been before this board in Carroll County, but I have a long history with the county. My first house, it was 1969. I bought a house right on London Bridge Road at Cherry Tree, so it's just east of the subject property. I moved there and raised a family there and lived in Carroll County and was very active in Carroll County, both politics and school system in the 70s and 80s. As part of my appointment as deputy director, it's an appointed position in Howard, I had to move to Howard County. So I moved to Woodbine, where I was in the Howard County side, but I could see the tank farm from my front yard. So I stayed as close as I possibly could. And so then more recently, I've worked with a couple of properties that were involved in the Freedom Area Comprehensive Plan, advising them on what the land use issues would be and the process, and also worked with a client here in Westminster, just on the edge of Westminster off of 140.
Are you familiar with the Carroll County Code and the master plan and the Freedom Area specifically plan?
Yes, I'm familiar with both the development codes and as I said, worked with some owners on the Freedom Plan.
Have you ever testified as an expert before?
Yes, I've been accepted as an expert in Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, Circuit Court, and Administrative Hearing Officer for the state.
Mr. Rudder, I'm showing you page 38 of Appellant's Exhibit 1. Is that a copy of your resume?
Yes, it is.
I would like to offer Mr. Rudder as an expert in the area of planning, land use, and zoning.
And we will accept him as an expert witness in those fields based upon his testimony and also what's the resume that was submitted.
Thank you. Mr. Rudder, is it accurate to state that you were hired by Mr. Stavlas in anticipation of this BZA hearing?
Yes, I was hired in early June, just after the planning commission meeting.
Okay. Can you just describe what you did, what you looked at to begin your analysis?
Yes, I reviewed the site plan, the zoning, subdivision code, the county master plans, particularly the Freedom Master Plan, and then the implementing comprehensive zoning that came after the Freedom Plan, where they got rid of the BNR, changed it to C2.
So prior to your involvement in this case, were you familiar with the Carroll County Master Plan and or the Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan?
Yes, both, and as I said, I've worked with clients both in the Freedom area and the Westminster area, which is outside of the town, but needed to know what the county master plan called for along that section of 140.
Okay. In preparing for this case, did you have the opportunity to review planning comment letters that were part of the development review and site plan file for this?
Yes.
Okay. You're looking at page 42 of Appellant's Exhibit 1. Can you just briefly summarize this letter?
Yes, I think it starts with the important part. It doesn't come to a conclusion. It comes to a conclusion up front that I totally agree with. It says the above referenced development proposal has been reviewed for consistency with the policies and recommendations contained in the Carroll County Master Plan, the Carroll County Master Plan for Water and Sewerage, and other area plans, which would in this case be Freedom, and functional plans, water and sewer, applicable policies and recommendation, and it cites that they're related to land use, land major streets, community facilities, agricultural, and historic don't really apply, and then leads to a conclusion that the site development plan complies with all of those requirements.
In your expert opinion, what is the relevant master plan for this property?
Freedom.
And you just said it briefly, but I'll draw your attention to it again. In your expert opinion, do you agree with this letter from the Department of Planning?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that the Planning Commission, as part of its role, is tasked with reviewing a plan's consistency with the master plan?
Yes.
In your expert opinion, is this plan, or this site plan, I should be specific, is the site plan that's before the board today consistent with the 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan, and to the extent applicable, the 2014 County Master Plan?
Yes, and I think it's important to go back in some of the history.
And briefly, before you start that, I just want to say that the 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan and the 2014 County Master Plan, I would like to ask that to the extent Mr. Rudder references those, that those be taken, that the board takes judicial notice of those two master plans as their county documents. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can briefly go over the history of planning with this particular area. The corner of Cleese Mill Road and 26 was first designated for commercial and industrial in the 1964 master plan. The 2000 master plan again designated this area as covered, and revisited earlier land use decisions. And I want to put into the record the 2000 master plan stated, recognizing the traditional challenges posed by residential and commercial development and their respective demands on a variety of public services, the 2000 edition of the Carroll County Master Plan contained herein essentially reaffirms support for the basic premises, concept, and development patterns chartered in the 1964 plan, Carroll's, and then it goes on to the 8 municipalities and the master plans for the Eldersburg, well, they called it Eldersburg and Finksburg at the time, or continued in 2000. It's then, in 2014 master plan, now it has an important statement of, today, unlike in 1964, it is increasingly difficult to balance the community's desire to maintain and even increase the quality of life with the pressures of development and development's demand on natural resources, public services, and infrastructure, reaffirming the visions set forth in the 1964 and the 2000 master plan updates. The 2014 Carroll County Master Plan targets the county's designated growth areas to receive the majority of development. And as we said before, this is in designated growth area. Subject property zone is designated as Tier 2, which is in conformance to the state's Sustainable Growth Act. It's included in the Freedom Comprehensive Plan. And we would note that the original Freedom Plan was adopted in 1977 and updated in 2001. And then the other update started in 2007 and took until 2018, 11 years in process. So the opportunity for public involvement and discussions of these plans has been pretty consistent from 1964 to today, that this area near the intersection is appropriate for growth and development.
Mr. Rutter, I am drawing your attention to page 3 of Exhibit 1 here. Can you just tell us what that shows and what the land use designation is for the subject property?
Yes, actually, the staff put this drawing up on the board earlier, and it shows a mix of commercial, industrial, and residential at the Clees Mill 26 intersection. South of the subject property is where it gets into the conservation area, which is appropriate because it's draining down towards the Piney Run Reservoir. But other than the high school, the rest of the area is primarily industrial and commercial.
And what is this from? I just want you to clarify. What is this map from?
It's the one from the Freedom Community Master Plan. I want to say page 74. No, not.
You're better than
it's
I.
not-
You
it's
can
not-
cite the page
no.
number of the Freedom Plan,
There's
but this
another-
is from the Freedom Plan.
It is
that
from the
accurate?
Freedom Plan, yes.
Okay. And what future land use designation does this provide for the subject property?
Commercial medium.
And it's your expert opinion that that land use designation is consistent, and that this plan, the Freedom Plan, is consistent with the site plan that is before this board today?
That's correct. The site plan is consistent with the Freedom Plan.
Yes, I'm sorry. I may have reversed that. Thank you for correcting me. Those are my only questions of Mr. Rutter.
Okay, does anyone in the audience have any questions of Mr. Rutter's testimony? Mr. McCormick?
Bill McCormick, MACCORMACK, cybersecurity engineer, 5685 Rhonda Road, Eldersburg, Maryland. Am I speaking loud enough?
Yes.
Okay. Were you present at any of the community outreach meetings for commercial comprehensive rezoning in Carroll County?
No.
In your opinion, when rezoning takes place, is there any kind of standard with regards to the types of density and the surrounding areas? For example, is it standard to have concentric circles of density, say high intensity in the middle, medium intensity in the second ring, and then lower intensity in the outer ring?
I'm going to object to that. Mr. Rutter's testimony was specific to the site plan and its conformance with any of the master plans, not about the history of the rezoning in terms of why this property got zoned the way it was. This property is zoned. We are here today requesting site plan approval. We're not revisiting the rezoning issue.
He's been accepted as an expert.
Yes, but Mr. McCormick, the relevance to the approval or disapproval of the site plan is what we're here today. And just to let you know, I was on the planning commission that approved the 1997 or 2000 plan. So I'm very familiar with it. I could probably answer the question better than he could, but I can't.
Okay,
As chairman.
I understand.
So I'm just saying, the relevance of that question to what we are charged with here today, which is to look at this site plan de novo, which is what we're doing, I don't see the relevance of that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Board members, questions of Mr. Rutter's testimony? Very good. Thank you. Ms. Miller, is this your final witness?
That is, I am concluded with witnesses, but I do just want to procedurally make sure that applicants or appellants Exhibit 1 is officially accepted and entered as an exhibit, and then I believe that 2 is the copy of the development review file, and then 3 is the traffic impact study. I mean, I was unclear if we
order, or
ever
is it-
entered 1
Yes,
or
they are,
not.
they are all in evidence.
Okay.
Okay, they're all in evidence, but
Excellent.
are 2 and 3? Okay, I just want to make sure that 2 and 3 weren't, you didn't have those confused, but that was number 2.
Yes.
Okay.
That concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Allman, anything?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And now at this point, does anyone in the audience have any testimony that they want to give? And again, testimony. You don't have to ask, you don't have to ask questions, although we do have enough expert witnesses here and staff, I think, that we could answer questions. So please go to the microphone, state your name, your address, occupation, and spell for the record your last name.
All right, name is Robert Weinreich, W-E-I-N-R-E-I-C-H, 504 Equus Drive, Sykesville, Maryland, and my occupation is retired. I had a question first. This meeting has been described as de novo, I think is the word. What does that mean?
That means from the beginning, so we're not looking at any, we're looking at this as if we were acting in place of the planning commission.
I see. Okay. I presented the same information at the earlier meeting, and it was back in June. And I just wanted to reiterate my concerns about this particular location and what goes on. This is a picture of the property, the commercial property immediately to the west of this proposed thing. I forget the name of this little development. For years and years and years, it was a derelict, dirty looking property with the sign blown out, exposed fluorescent light bulbs, some of them flickering, some of them out. They only had one consistent tenant there. That was a liquor store. They had some temporary things. They had a baby consignment shop that came and went. They had a nail salon that came and went. And we would go into the liquor store and we would complain about the appearance of this property. And the guy there, who was the manager, said, well, we've complained to the landlord, but we can't get him to do anything. Apparently, he's not making enough money off of this property because the property only had the one consistent tenant. Finally, several years ago, maybe even 4 years ago, the liquor store moved out of here. They moved catty corner across the intersection, and they're in that other, that was also a vacant property. So now this property, whoever, after they moved out, whoever owned the property, whoever bought the property, did a pretty nice job giving the place a facelift, and it looks pretty nice. But it has been empty for at least the last 4 years. No occupants at all, period. This is the Liberty Square Shopping Center, which is catty corner across that intersection on the intersection of Cleese Mill and Liberty Road. It is half occupied, if that, and it's been that way for years. The campus, that large campus just down the road on Exchange Drive, it's been there for a decade or more, and it's still not completely leased out. This is a picture.
Let me, What location was that?
That's that campus, it's the large campus, it's called Exchange Drive.
Is that the St. John's property?
I don't know, it might be.
Okay, I'm getting head nods and a yes from up here. I just,
And I understand some of their tenants are moving out. I think the orthopedic people are moving out of there soon. This is the property down at Princess Square Shopping Center, which is the same format as the ones being proposed here. It appears to be 2/3 to 3/4 unoccupied, and it's been there for quite a while. Of the 1 or 2 or 3 storefronts that are there, a couple of them have their logos stenciled on large pieces of white paper taped to the inside. And now, when I presented this information, the gentleman sitting here said, oh, that's not correct. They've got 100% occupation with people waiting to get in there. Well, all I can say is if this property ends up looking like this, people driving through my neighborhood are going to think, oh, that must be 100% rented. They're going to be wondering, what the heck is all this empty storefront stuff doing around this intersection? So I'm concerned that all these things don't have tenants, aren't making money, and how long is it going to be before they look derelict and dirty? And so I just don't see what their expectations are. Is it just one of these, let's build it and they will come kind of information things? But I'm concerned about what this place is going to look like in a couple of years when these people aren't making any money. Thank you.
Ms. Miller, would you like to respond, or do you have any of your,
I have 2 follow-up questions for, I believe, Mr. Weinrich. Am I saying that correct? Mr. Weinrich, just in brief follow-up, and I'm sorry that I have to face here to speak into the microphone. But can you just briefly state any of the properties that you just spoke to? Do you own any of those properties?
No, I do not.
Okay. So can you just describe to the board kind of your basis of knowledge for speaking to the vacancies? Is that just observation? Have you spoken with someone?
Well, it's plain to see these properties are empty. I have the pictures of them here. I've lived here since 1983, so I'm familiar with.
So is
going on
it's
here?
fair to say that that's based on observation?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
Is it fair to say that that is based on observation?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my only questions.
How do you spell your last name, sir?
WEINREICH.
got it, Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. Mr. McCormick?
Hi, Bill McCormick, MACCORMACK, cybersecurity engineer, 5685 Rhonda Road, Eldersburg, Maryland. So just to reference what I was talking about before, there was a preliminary site plan submitted and accepted to the county for this property, received October 4th, 2019. That was prior to the rezoning. That was prior to the Board of County Commissioners voting to rezone this property from BNR to C2. And that was from a PIA request that I sent to the county back in 2019. So first, since this is a de novo hearing, which I'll address in a second, I would like to pass out the letter that I wrote to the Planning and Zoning Commission prior to the final site plan meeting. Can I hand that to you guys?
Yes, you can,
Just one copy?
yeah,
Or-
Mr. Dixon can go ahead and label that as evidence.
Okay.
Do you have more than one? I do. You have enough for all of us, or a couple to share? That would be. And save a copy for Ms. Miller.
I have 5 copies.
Okay, go ahead and give her one copy, and we'll take 4 up here. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got copies?
Sorry, I only brought 5 copies, so I don't have
That's okay.
a lot of resources. So as I stated, my name is Bill McCormick, and I stated my address. I live on Long Reach Farms, Lot 18, which, if you've seen the map, is directly southeast of the property in question. So according to the appeal submitted to the county by the developer and his representative, he's appealing the ruling of the Planning and Zoning Commission and their denial of the proposed plan. So as far as this is a de novo hearing, I realize this is a little bit late, but I completely object to that. The original letter to the BZA stated that they were appealing based on the idea that the Planning and Zoning Commission made a mistake in their ruling. That is how I believe the BZA should look at that. The only reference I saw to de novo in the code is in reference to granting a variance. So according to 158.133 D8, the BZA may grant or deny a requested variance based on evidence before it and after a de novo hearing. So I assume that this is that de novo hearing. So
What did you reference? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
I'm sorry, yeah, 158.133 D8.
It should be D2.
You may be correct. Paragraph 8, subsection D. The BZA may grant or deny a requested variance based on evidence before it and after a de novo hearing. Given that this is that de novo hearing, it only stands to reason that they're requesting a variance, which means that they're somewhat acknowledging that as submitted, their plan does not meet code, or that the Planning and Zoning Commission had the right afforded to them by the code to deny the plan as submitted based on the letter of the code. I have some evidence, given that you don't agree, that this should be denied outright. So the idea that this appeal should be heard de novo, like new, on its merits, kind of infuriates me, because to date, had things been decided on their merits, we would not be here. The stack of misguided, misaligned, and misdirected decisions that has taken place with regards to this property to date is quite large. While I would like to list every single one of them, it's likely that this would be seen as an attack against the county employees, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and those that represent us, and that is truly not my intent. For that matter, I will do my best to keep my scope narrow and focused on the question at hand. However, if you all have questions with regards to any of those questionable decisions in the past, I would be more than happy to answer those. So as stated, the BZA may grant or deny a request of variance applying the same standards and criteria set forth in 158.133G, which is effectively the section of the code that deals with conditional uses. According to the code, the BZA, and I'm quoting here, shall study the specific property involved as well as the neighborhood and consider all testimony and data submitted. So as a cybersecurity engineer, I kind of have experience reading protocol standards. In those standards, there's language: shall, may, should, can. All of those have specific meanings, and I would like you to keep those meanings in mind. I understand that you all sometimes have a difficult job, especially when it comes to dealing with the public as well as the developers that you see regularly. But it's so important that I hope that you all have considered all testimony and data submitted. As there is no specific time limit applied to that requirement, I would ask that you consider all testimony, not only testimony that you hear today, but also the testimony from past hearings, as well as the thoughts and concerns expressed by the Planning and Zoning Commission during both the preliminary and final site plans that were submitted by the developer. I would specifically ask that you note the numerous concerns raised by the Planning and Zoning Commission during the concept site review that were not addressed or just outright ignored by the developer when they returned for the final site review. I would also ask that you consider all data to include previous hearings regarding the rezoning of this property, as well as changes to the county master plans that were made to accommodate this developer to the detriment of residents who had much more pressing needs in the form of water and sewer upgrades and relief. If you have reviewed previous data and hearings, it is likely that you've seen and heard me arguing about this for quite some time, and for that I apologize. But this is really important to me. However, there are also comments from other neighbors as well as groups in our community which are against this particular project. There was an objection to the comments that were submitted to the BZA, the written ones that were submitted via email. I would like to note that nowhere in the code does it state that those who submit comments need to be present for a cross-examination. As I've stated in the past, we're not against growth. It's expected, but in accordance with the vision for Carroll County, the desire for smart, measured growth is paramount. Prior to this hearing, we circulated a letter in the community rebutting every single argument in the developer's appeal, which is, I expect, why this is now a de novo hearing. We had close to 150, it was 139 signatures to be exact, in agreement with our statements and against the project. This was not some change.org petition. This was a petition that we submitted among our community to see if they would back us in what we submitted. So this wasn't some petition that anybody on the internet could sign. This was people from our community. Both the letter and the list of residents was emailed to the administrator, Ms. Vance, who I would like to say has been extremely helpful in answering my questions. And I hope that if you have not reviewed it, that you will take the time to read it. Secondly, as noted, I hope that each of you has studied the surrounding neighborhood, specifically those lots and areas that sit well below the proposed finished floor elevation of the project in question. I do know that a site visit was scheduled and I was present during the scheduled visit, but I do hope that each of you spent some time and did more than a cursory glance at the surrounding area. There are a number of homes with small children as well as a daycare within close proximity to the proposed development. There is also a conservation and forest protection area that sits well below the proposed finished floor elevation of this project. There is more than one drainage concern presented with the proposed project, even with the input from county sewer water management. To speak directly to the items listed in 158-133, the application shall not be approved where the BZA finds the proposed use would adversely affect the public health, safety, security, morals, or general welfare, would result in dangerous traffic conditions, or would jeopardize the lives or property of people living in the neighborhood. And there's that language again, shall. I've listed in past letters to the PCC why this specific project should not be approved, based on any number of those items. The large number of empty commercial spaces will lead to blight, which will both increase crime and decrease property values for the surrounding area. The landscape design as well as the site layout leaves multiple areas open for possible nefarious activity, increasing not only crime, but leading to safety concerns for the surrounding community. The traffic conditions on this stretch of road are already horrendous. The Frankenstein's monster traffic study does no justice to alleviating fears of not only traffic becoming worse, but far more dangerous. The use of the word "or" in the previous quote signifies that the BZA shall not approve a proposed use should only one of those conditions be met. In 3 short sentences, we've demonstrated that a majority of those conditions are met. Thus, the BZA has the duty to deny the appeal on those grounds alone. However, 158-133G continues by stating that the BZA shall give consideration to, the orderly growth of the community. This project is in no way befitting the current surroundings, is in no way orderly. Traffic conditions and facilities. Previous evidence has noted the questionable traffic studies and the fact that improvements to 26 from White Rock to 97 are a medium priority for the county. The effect of the proposed use upon the peaceful enjoyment of people in their homes. This project will tower over at least one home, appearing to be a 4-story building, if second-story apartments are approved. The residents will be able to literally look right down into the home and backyard of Long Reach Farms Lot 18. The conservation of property values. This project has had and will continue to have a large negative impact to surrounding property values. The effect of odors, dust, gas, smoke, fumes, vibrations, glare, and noise upon the use of surrounding property values. I'm not sure if you've all been to the Princess Shopping Center recently, but the stench in that parking lot is horrendous. Additionally, runoff from parking lots and dumpster pads will run directly by the house and well on Long Reach Farms Lot 18. As stated, not only do I not wish to attack the county planners, the county commissioners, or the PZC, I would like to draw attention to the work they've done in the past. In the last 4 years, the current Board of County Commissioners has overhauled a huge chunk of the current county code with what I can only assume is a huge effort by support staff in the planning department. It's no secret that I disagree with a number of things that each of these groups of people has done in their tenure. I could point out numerous examples, but again, trying to limit the scope here. The language set forth in 155.094, the code having to do with planned commercial centers, is quite clear. And we can assume, based on the hundreds or even possibly thousands of person hours that went into developing those codes, that the language is specific and deliberate. The code having to do with planned commercial centers states that the PCC may approve a PCC. Additionally, if a PCC is approved by the PZC, acronyms, the PZC may approve second-story apartments. While each of these has conditions set forth upon them, the code is clear. Both are at the discretion of the PZC. In 2013, this same developer planned to build the same type of project in the Princess Shopping Center. It's likely that you will hear on this very day that feelings don't matter. However, when residents found out about those plans, they were not happy. They did not believe this type of project belonged there. The developer's response back in 2013 was that no one showed up to any of the PZC or technical meetings, so he was unaware of the community displeasure. As such, the project was completed. The developer by himself drawing attention to the lack of community pushback with that project has clearly shown that the feelings of the community do matter and are relevant. The code agreed to and adopted by the Board of County Commissioners gives redress to us county residents, whereby we may share our feelings with the PZC. It allows the PZC to measure the desires of a developer against the needs of a community. It allows the community to be equally and fairly represented and ensure that if the community's feelings are based in fact and reason, which I've demonstrated, the PZC may listen. The PZC listened to the developer and the community at the final site plan hearing for this specific project. And they unanimously decided to deny this project, which was their right afforded by the code as written. If this is a de novo hearing and you are acting as the PZC here, this is also your right as well. The PZC may approve the project. The PZC may approve second-story apartment buildings. It doesn't say shall. The BZA should affirm the PZC's decision and deny this project as proposed. Thank you very much.
Ms. Miller, do you have any follow-up questions?
I just have one brief question, Mr. McCormick. You spoke about the letter that I believe Mr. Dixon introduced at the beginning of the case with with names attached to it.
Yes.
You just said that was circulated to the community. Can you explain to the board how you obtain those names?
Certainly, we have a mailing list that we've developed based on going around to houses in our development, and we also posted on 2 Facebook news groups. We posted on the Freedom District Citizens Association news group, as well as the Sykesville Online Community news group.
So did you have the opportunity to speak individually with each of those people, or they just somehow submitted their name to you?
Speak in person?
Yes.
No.
Thank you. Those are my only questions.
Board members, any questions of his testimony?
It's okay. No, it wasn't for him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So at this point, we can close testimony and have,
Mr. Chair, I do have a quick rebuttal testimony, if you will.
okay, very good. I'm sorry, I didn't see that coming, but go ahead, you can call a rebuttal witness.
No problem, thank you. I would like to call Mr. Ron Thompson. And wait, let me ask first, was that letter was just entered as McCormick Exhibit 1? Mr. Dixon? Was
Yes.
that entered? Okay. Mr. Thompson, can you please state your name, spelling your last name for the record again?
Ronald Thompson, Thompson.
Mr. Thompson, you had the very quick opportunity to review McCormick Exhibit 1, which is that letter, but also to hear Mr. McCormick's testimony. Specifically, can you, well, not can you, did you go through the customary and ordinary stormwater management review process as part of this site plan?
Yes, and it was actually more detailed than we normally would for a particular site.
And does that review process account for runoff and any kind of stormwater management concerns?
We're required to, begins with soil testing to see what the infiltration rates of the soil are in order to come up with various techniques of treating stormwater management. We are required to treat, because this is a vacant site, not a redevelopment site, required to treat the entire stormwater management requirements for the site. That included permeable pavement, grass, our micro bioretention swales, and a micro bioretention facility. In addition, because of the downstream characteristics from the site, we were required to complete a very detailed analysis of the remaining site runoff as it leaves the site and its impact to the area. That drainage actually runs through the property owned by the current owner-developer of Lot 18, Mr. Stavlos, and it then runs through and fans out a sheet flow through that forest conservation area behind the site.
And as a result of these studies and review, did the plan receive final stormwater management approval?
Yes, it did.
Is it customary during a site plan review process for SHA or the county to comment or request land if there is any kind of planned improvements or any sort of planned work along Maryland Route 26?
Both State Highway and Carroll County issued comments in regards to stormwater management, and we had to comply with each of the agency's requirements for addressing stormwater management and runoff from the improvements.
And again, did you receive final approvals from all relevant agencies?
Yes, we did.
Those are my only questions of Mr. Thompson. Thank you.
Any questions of his testimony? Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Bill McCormick, MAC, cybersecurity engineer, 5685 Rhonda Road, Eldersburg, Maryland. Should this project be approved, who would be responsible for drainage issues onto Lot 18, if any develop?
To the extent Mr. Thompson can answer, I have no objection to him answering to the best of his knowledge, but I believe, to me, that is a legal conclusion. That part of that question needs to be answered through a legal analysis, but if Mr. Thompson has some insight.
You understand what her angle is, Mr. McCoy?
I'm more than happy to ask the county lawyer the same question.
I would agree with Ms. Schaefer that question calls for a legal conclusion.
If you rephrase the question, you might get the answer, you might get it. In other words, if you take out the legally, I don't want to put words in your mouth, But if you ask about the water issues with, was it lot number 19? Is
Lot
it?
18.
18. If you would just ask him about that, he could probably address that without the legal reference.
That's my concern, is any legal redress that I have should drainage issues develop on my property as a result of this development. It certainly should not be my responsibility.
I would suggest that he would seek outside counsel.
It's, not to summarize Mr. Thompson's testimony for him, but it's been Mr. Thompson's testimony that that will not be an issue because this plan meets all of the stormwater requirements and has gone through quite an intense and rigorous stormwater review process. So I don't think Mr. Thompson can speak to that because that has not been his testimony.
I highly doubt every sewer water management project is 100% successful.
Yeah,
Okay, I asked my question. Thank you very much.
yeah. He couldn't give you a legal answer because he's not an attorney, and you heard what the attorney said, you would need outside legal counsel, okay? I don't want you to sit down frustrated, I want you to understand the position that we're in here as a board, okay?
Thank you.
Very good. Do we have any more witnesses?
I do not know, thank you.
Okay. Presentation of testimony and evidence is now closed and summations are in order. Ms. Miller.
Would you like me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you. Briefly, I just want to address the de novo standard that I know we've spoken about. The board's authority and powers is listed in 158-133B, which is actually a complete reiteration of the Maryland Annotated Code, Section 4306, which states that this board sits in the role of the Planning Commission. So the minutes of the Planning Commission and some of the Planning Commission's comments might be a part of this record, but this board is tasked with reviewing this case afresh with new eyes. The application for an appeal requests an allegation of error, but that is not the standard of review before this board. This board's standard of review is de novo. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to provide those code citations to you. The Planned Commercial Center, which was formerly called the Planned Business Center, so if anybody's familiar with the old code, that's why I keep getting my letters and words mixed up. The Planned Commercial Center is a defined use in the zoning code. It is a principal permitted use in the C2 district. It has specific provisions, which I've included a copy of the code section. I know you have probably numerous copies of it, but I've provided one in this packet to you. On page 6 of this packet that outlines the specific requirements for a planned commercial center. A planned commercial center, in essence, comprises 3 or more commercial uses, which is then what qualifies it as a planned commercial center, and then it must go through the additional requirements under that section of the code specifically that are not relevant to all other uses in the C2 district. You have heard today testimony from 3 qualified expert witnesses that this site plan meets all requirements, that this went through the ordinary review process, that it, in fact, 2+ years of review before final approvals were obtained by all agencies. It's important to note that that review process is not just county agencies, but in this case was SHA was a very involved agency as well because of this property's access onto Maryland Route 26. It is no small task to go through that exercise of resubmittals and addressing all comments and meeting all code requirements. there's been a lot of talk of history here today, rezoning history, and I know that I'm probably belaboring the point, but I will just say to you that that is not what is before this board. I understand that there might be people who have an issue with the fact that this property was rezoned, but that is not the issue here today. The issue here today is that this property is zoned C2, that a planned commercial center is a principal permitted use in the C2 district, and that the site plan meets all of the code requirements. The role of this board is not to evaluate the market and deny or approve a plan because of vacancies in the area or because of the need for this type of use. That is not one of the criteria that this board is tasked with reviewing. So I would focus your attention on the expert testimony that you heard here today from the engineer who submitted the site plan, the traffic engineer who prepared and submitted the traffic study, and our qualified planner and zoning expert who spoke to the consistency with the master plan, which is one of the criteria that you, sitting as planning commission effectively, is tasked with analyzing. So with that, I would ask that this board approve the site plan that's presented to you today. I would ask that you approve it in similar language to what was included in the staff report to Planning Commission with those listed conditions. So I believe that I included a copy of the staff report in my packet to you as well. So there is on page 31. Pages 31 and 34 include the conditions that Mrs. Matthias read during her presentation as well. So we would request your approval of the site plan that's been presented to you today, subject to those same conditions that staff recommended favorably of during the presentation here today. Thank you.
Mr. Allman.
I have no closing, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. The hearing and record of this case is now closed, and in accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland, the board will now consider the case. We'll go from oldest. Oh, wait. We'll let our senior member go first. Mr. Simmons.
I hear you. I see, or I heard, compelling evidence and reasons to support this approval. I'm not quite sure how to word what needs to be said, but at least that's my sense. I'm interested in hearing other board members' appraisal of this whole situation, and I'll reserve my judgment until I hear that.
Ms. Ford Mount.
So I heard and agree that in that area, there's far too many open spaces that could be rented but aren't. I understand that that's not my job here today, and I have to say that it's unfortunate that it's not my job, because if I could deny it, I would. I don't think it's needed. I think there are tons of spaces that are under-rented or not rented at all. I do feel like the residential could be very helpful in that area, apartments and things like that. I know that housing in general is down and is needed. Commercial space, there are tons of commercial space in that area that are not rented. But I don't see how I could legally, as my job here, deny it. It seems like it is allowed in that area. The steps have been taken. It is a commercial lot, so commercial businesses are allowed there. So I would have to agree that it is allowed.
Ms. Eckert?
I think the site is appropriately zoned for a planned commercial center. The site plan has all agency approvals, which is compelling, and the staff recommended approval of the site plan. So I'm at a bit of a loss to understand why it wasn't approved. And I am ready to vote for approval similar to the staff report with the conditions mentioned, which I understand were not going to be an issue and that the developer was willing to meet.
Mr. Snyder?
I agree with Ms. Ecker in that it seems, it's really nice from some past experience we've had that this actually moved through the process as it should. It wasn't circumvented, it wasn't bypassed, it wasn't something wasn't hopped over. But it looks like the process was honored. It was fulfilled. The expert testimony is very fulfilling, and that, of course, with staff giving unilateral agreement and recommendation for approval. I agree there's a lot of commercial down there, but that is what the master plan called for. It's the growth area. I will say, topic I'm very knowledgeable of is residential rentals, for housing, and I will tell you, there's a tremendous shortage in Sykesville. It really is. Those will fill up very, very quickly. So with all that said, I would support approving the site plan.
Okay. I have a confession. I was on the planning commission that actually approved the residential portion of Long Reach Farms. It's also on the planning commission that in the 1997 or 2000 plan, whatever it was, reaffirmed that front area there should be commercial. Thought it was kind of interesting that the way the plan was originally put before the planning commission with the residential, it's like, why is this out here commercial? There's already commercial on that side of the road. It's actually a wetland, a stream that separates the two, if I remember correctly. It is a principal permitted use, so it didn't come before us asking for a conditional use. And I asked the question about the concept plan and the final plan because I'm very familiar with how it works at the planning commission. The final plan was an accurate representation of the concept plan with the recommendations that came out of that. So there was some discussion, but no hard recommendations that came out of the planning commission. The traffic issues. The county, in this case, was extremely fortunate that there was a project across the road that was going through the development process at approximately the same time, so that the mitigation efforts could be coordinated with both of these projects coming online in the same time period. That's a plus, because State Highway and county has an opportunity there to make sure that the mitigation efforts, you don't do mitigation efforts on one side of the road that would be detrimental to mitigation efforts that would be needed on the other side. Parking issues, that's one of the things that the Planning Commission is charged with looking at. It's more than adequate according to the code. This plan meets all code requirements and met all agency requirements. I don't understand why this is, frankly, why this is before us. If all of those conditions are met, I don't understand how it could have been turned down by the Planning Commission. Forestry or the landscaping, the water resources, the project was actually limited. It went from 3 buildings down to 2. The reason it went from 3 buildings down to 2 was the availability of water and sewer. They complied with everything that they had to deal with as far as the restrictions. I don't see why this project should not go forward with the 7 conditions that were listed in the development review presentation. And those 7, just want to add, those 7 conditions listed there were not, they were standard conditions as a result of this project. These weren't special conditions that were put in there because of the size or scope or scale of the project. So with that, board members, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, just procedurally, it would, this is going the way it seems to be going, is that there would be 2 motions, one to approve the plan pursuant to 155, Chapter 155, and the recommendations for Chapter 155, then a separate motion to approve for chapter, pursuant to Chapter 156, and the recommendations for Chapter 156.
And thank you. It's been a while since I've been on planning commission. Are you confused or are you ready?
155 is the first one.
155, okay, in case 6406, I move that we approve the site plan in accordance with chapter 155.
With the conditions listed.
I thought that was the second, with the conditions listed.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second that.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, 156.
What's the second piece of that?
It's 156, and we're approving, under 166, we're making a motion to approve.
Just pursuant to Chapter 156, which is the concurrency management chapter, and all the recommendations under 156.
Basically the same one with just.
Just a different chapter, yes, sir.
Different chapter, because that is the concurrency management chapter.
Okay, in case number 6406, I move that we grant approval in accordance with chapter 156 and all of the,
Conditions.
inclusive of the conditions.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Our oral decision will become final upon a written decision which will be issued within 30 days unless otherwise extended by the board. The board's decision may be appealed by filing a petition for judicial review with the clerk of the circuit court for Carroll County in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 200, Title 7 of the Maryland Rules of Procedure. The appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of the board's written decision. We are adjourned. Thank you.